to in a way. You don't bow to and away from your seat because you haven't stopped doing zazen. You haven't left. You're continuing practice. And it's interesting, isn't it, how taking one step into activity from sitting creates a whole world of problems. It doesn't take very much, does it? Then you wonder, how do I actually get out in the world and manage, and so much come out, like, why are these people walking this way? And what are we supposed to do? And oh my God, what all the things that happen in Kenyan. And yet when I sit and watch you here online, and I turned my camera off because I stepped out and walked out in the sunshine for a moment. It's so beautiful to watch you walk silently together. It's that famous line of Ram Dass, we're just walking each other home, is a kind of a poignant expression of how we are accompanying each other in the great matter that we're called to. So here we are back again, and I know the afternoon can be a little sleepy, so we're going to make sure that we stay connected and conversational and alive here for the next 50 minutes or so. Cheryl was kind enough to send me a message in between, because I invited all of you to send things from the readings that you would like to. So there was something from the first segment on posture. The last, I think it's the last chapter, and that segment is bowing. And this was the message that Cheryl sent. She said, could you say something about the last paragraph in the chapter called Bowing? It's a comment about making progress on the path, or rather knowing that you are making progress on the path. So Cheryl, you want to come up for a minute so we can talk?
So
yeah, and by the way, those of you who are interested, let's see, do I have the page number on there? Shoot, I thought I had the page number.
it's page
Oh,
40.
there it is. Go ahead. Say it again.
And this book is page 41. I don't know.
Page 30 in this.
30. All the different editions.
If you look in your index and you go to bowing and then look at the last paragraph.
The last paragraph of the section.
Yeah. And this is the one that she was interested in. So why don't you read that last paragraph, Cheryl, and then we'll see what it is, okay?
Okay. After you have practiced for a while, you will realize that it is not possible to make rapid, extraordinary progress.
Okay, probably should stop there. Really? Like, wait a minute. If you're just doing the right practice, shouldn't you get enlightened right away? No. So you have to read that sentence again.
After you have practiced for a while, you will realize that it is not possible to make rapid, extraordinary progress. Even though you try very hard, the progress you make is always little by little. It is not like going out in a shower in which you know when you get wet. In a fog, you do not know you are getting wet, but as you keep walking, you get wet little by little. If your mind has ideas of progress, you may say, oh, this pace is terrible. But actually, it is not. When you get wet in a fog, it is very difficult to dry yourself. So there's no need to worry about progress. It's like studying a foreign language. You cannot do it all of a sudden, but by repeating it over and over, you will master it. This is the Soto way of practice. We can say either that we make progress little by little, or that we do not even expect to make progress. Just to be sincere and make our full effort in each moment is enough. There is no nirvana outside our practice.
So that was the paragraph you're interested in.
Yeah, and I have two angles on it. One of them is that I teach meditation a lot to people that are new to it. And they often say, I'm not doing it right because I still feel miserable or whatever. You know, they have these like expectations of progress. So that was one level. But then on a personal level too, it's like progress doesn't look like I think it's going to look like, you know, and in fact, it feels like as I get older and more, you know, experienced with practice, there's nowhere left to hide. It feels so like raw, you know, and I can't fool myself as easily as I used to. And I did not bargain for this. So it's like,
Yeah, tying these two things together. Oh, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go
well, I
ahead.
just want to crawl back under the blanket, you know, sometimes, and be able to not know what is happening, you know.
Well, and that's the return to beginner's mind. Tying the two things together that you mentioned, working with beginners, people who are actually beginners or learning meditation. What we meet usually are all the projections and all the longings and all the curative fantasies. That's the big one that we come with, a curative fantasy. And the secret practices, if I just do this, it will finally, all of that. And then there's the other side, which you are alluding to, which I kind of mentioned with Judith this morning. If you've practiced for a really long time and you say, why didn't somebody tell me this in the beginning? But you can't because no one would ever come. Not because it's terrible news. It's because there's no way to understand it without experience. And what you talked about, I translated in my head as there's this deep, deep tenderizing effect that happens in practice over time. And what we use the word progress to mean begins to fall apart. There was a vignette I was thinking about from Suzuki Roshi. One of the, I can't remember who it was, but one of the beat poets who was pretty well known, you know, there in San Francisco, came to sit way back when and to a session, to a 7-day intensive retreat. And you know what it's like about the third or fourth day in. You know, then you're really like, why did I think this was a good idea? You know. And so anyway, he came to see Suzuki for Dokusan, for a private interview. And he, in all sincerity, he said, I can't do this. This is too hard. I can't do it. And Suzuki didn't he didn't say, oh, okay, you know, it's okay to leave if you need, or he didn't encourage him to stay. He said, yes, we try and we try and we try and we fail. And then we go deeper. And of course, what we fail isn't a failure, is we fail all our expectations. Just like the Buddha did in mastering all the practices of his day. And then he had to sit down because they didn't answer his question. But there's very little in our culture that makes this appealing, to say it that way. Suzuki Roshi one time said, you know, practice is like getting into a small rowboat, rowing out into the middle of the lake, knowing it's going to sink. Yeah, and it's not a joke. It's like, we know how this ends. We know how it goes, but you actually don't have a choice about getting in the boat, but you do have a choice about how you row and how you take care of things and how you meet the day. So sometimes I kind of despair and hang my head a little bit about when people come to say, well, I'm not doing this right, and meditation, isn't it going to help me? And I say, well, when I first did TM, did some of you do transcendental meditation? Back when I was in graduate school, I did. I thought it would save me, And it says on the little sort of PR thing, it says, you do this meditation, you'll get everything you want, What they forget to say is there's a little asterisk, and down at the bottom it says you'll get everything you want because you won't want anything anymore. And it's not really the conventional wisdom about what happens. So progress falls away. And the progress is a deepening. Kobun Chino Roshi, another great teacher, he's talking about the precepts. He said, the precepts are about hard climbing, maybe climbing down, getting off of something and finding our footing in our lives, as our lives, with a great amount of humility and generosity and gratitude. But it's not what people expect. And most of practice is helping people know what it's not. So I know I'm going on and on about these two things, but and bowing, it's in that section on bowing. And so many students ask me about, what's the deal about bowing? It's foreign. Is it worship? Is it, I don't get bowing. So I wish I were in the room with you so I could enact it, because I'm going to have to, right? So I'm standing there on the bowing mat, facing the altar or whatever. I'm facing my life. If you really face your life fully, it's going to take you to your knees. Not because it's terrible, but because it's everything that it is. It's overwhelmingly magnificent and terrifying. And you're going to go to the ground, but you can't stay there. Because a lot of people need help, so you got to get up. But then you do it again and again and again as life takes you down to the ground of what's there, and your willingness and your choice to stand up again in the middle of it and offer yourself fully. And so I say that's what I understand bowing is. It's not about worshiping something. It's about coming into relationship with everything, with your body.
It's funny that you said, well, the practice I'm doing right now is prostrations, where I have to do 110,000 of them.
Right. Younger.
55, so I got a ways to go. But it's like, the other part of it is that the stakes feel like they're getting higher the older I get. You know what I mean? Because everybody's getting around me is aging, and I'm aging, and the end is approaching, and I still don't have it right. I'm still trying.
Yep. Doing, Suzuki would say, doing one thing as best you can fully is practice. Just doing one thing completely. And this thing about nirvana, well, there's another chapter in the book about the waterfall in Yosemite. You remember that?
Yeah.
It's well, let's take a look at it. I think it's on page 93 in the old version and 82 in the anniversary version. And the paragraph that starts, I went to Yosemite National Park. Do you see that in there?
Is it called the waterfall? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, in your version, Cheryl, it would be on page 82.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, and by the way, I really love the train.
Yeah, isn't it great?
Yeah, it's like the train of mindfulness.
Yeah.
And, and if you want a story to go with it, read the last chapter in Joko Beck's original book, Everyday Zen, called The Story of Mushin, and there's a train in there. So read it sometime. Okay. I went to Yosemite National Park, and I saw some huge waterfalls. The highest one was 1,340 feet high, and from it, the water comes down like a curtain thrown from the top of the mountain. It does not seem to come down swiftly, as you might expect. It seems to come down very slowly because of the distance. And the water does not come down as one stream, but is separated into many tiny streams. From a distance, it looks like a curtain. And I thought, it must be a very difficult experience for each drop of water to come down from the top of such a high mountain. It takes time, a long time for the water finally to reach the bottom of the waterfall. And it seems to me that our human life may be like this. We have many difficult experiences in our life. But at the same time, I thought the water was not originally separated, but was one whole river. Only when it is separated does it have a difficulty in falling. It's as if the water does not have any feeling when it is one whole river. Only when separated into many drops can it begin to have or to express some feeling. When we see one whole river, we do not feel the living activity of the water, but when we dip a part of the water into a dipper, we experience the feeling of the water, and we also feel the value of the person who uses the water, feeling ourselves and the water in this way. We cannot use it in just a material way. It's a living thing. Once again, without trying to analyze it, it's such a beautiful image of what we're speaking about, isn't it? One of my good friends, Bob Rosenbaum, practices originally at the Berkeley Zen Center. That's why I met him. He was a student of Mel Weitzman there in Berkeley. And he was a neuropsychologist, retired from Kaiser Permanente. He was a very dedicated student. And he was also a longtime Qigong and yoga student and teacher. And so when he decided he would start studying and practicing Zen with Mel in Berkeley, he thought, okay, well, I'll sign up for a retreat, kind of like I did. I'm going to sign up for this retreat. It's a 7-day session. And I'll, because of my yoga and Qigong background, I'll have a beautiful experience and have wonderful meditation. And then he said, of course, from day one, it was hideous. And he was crying most of the time. And all the stuff that you have experienced in long, difficult retreats. And he just felt so discouraged and like, what is going on, So at the end, there was a Shoshan ceremony, and a Zen, a formal Zen retreat. This is when at the very end, everyone comes before the teacher in public and ask a pithy kind of question, And so he went in front of Mel in tears, saying all the stuff I just said. And then shaking and in tears, he said, "What is this?" And Mel said, "Nirvana." Not pleasure, not preference, the fullness and completeness of the entire universe offering you your life. And it looks like this right now. What is this? Nirvana. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy Swanson.
Yes.
Hi there. Come on
Hi.
up. Come on up to the. Good to see you again.
Hello, good to see you too.
Do you want to? Do you have? You want me to read the thing you sent to me?
Yes, please.
If you sent a message rather than a quotation, but we'll go there.
Okay. I think
This is
it's more about the image.
Yeah, this is what you sent. You wrote in between the chapter on God giving. So you could look in your book and see where that is. It's page, I think it's page 51 in the new edition and 67 in the anniversary edition. Well, God giving. Okay. So you wrote in between the chapter on God giving, page 51, the one you had, and an unnamed consideration on page 56. In between those pages is a fly just drawn meticulously on the page. I told you we would get to this, you know. I find this most interesting, you wrote, and curious, especially in the light that it is followed by a wonderful untitled prose of non-attachment on page 56. It's really just the completion of what came before it. So these two paragraphs, speaking of death and creation, is so profound to me. It's so profound to me that I often find myself there reading, observing, considering, and sitting like a fly on the wall, you know. So let's read the two paragraphs that you said were so okay. And I
If I,
think,
let's see, I have a tendency to get emotional. So I'd be happy to read it, but I'd probably cry.
oh, that's just fine. Let's see here. I'm going to find mine. So do you have the paperback, the older edition?
Yes, I do. The page is on 56 in my copy.
Okay. I'm gonna go my copy to that one too. Oh, now I say, that's the wrong one. I'm gonna go to this one. I've had a time going back and forth and back and forth. Okay, right before the fly is that there's the paragraph that starts, if you understand Dana Prajna Paramita. Is that it?
Yes.
Yeah. And then it goes to the end of the section, which is past the fly. Yeah. So you want to read all that for us, or do you want me to read one? You read one? What do you want to do?
I'll read it until I can't.
Okay, I'll pick up if you can't read anymore, okay?
If you understand Dana Prajna Paramita, you will understand how it is we create so many problems for ourselves. Of course, to live is to create problems. If we did not appear in this world, our parents would have no difficulty with us. Just by appearing, we create problems for them. This is all right. Everything creates some problems. But usually people think that when they die, everything is over. The problems disappear. But your death may create problems too. Actually, our problems should be solved or dissolved in this life. But if we are aware that what we do or what we create is really the gift of the big I, then we will not be attached to it, and we will not create problems for ourselves or for others. And we should forget day by day what we have done. This is true non-attachment. And we should do something new. To do something new, of course, we must know our past. And this is all right, but we should not keep holding on to anything we have done. This is part I probably cry.
Yeah, just take a breath and take it slow. We should not keep holding on to anything we've done.
But we should not keep holding on to anything we've done. We should only reflect on it. And we must have some idea of what we should do in the future. But the future is the future. The past is the past. Now we should work on something new. This is our attitude and how we should live in the world. This is Dana Prajna Paramita, to give something or to create something for ourselves. So to do something through and through is to resume our true activity of creation. This is why we sit. If we do not forget this point, everything will be carried on beautifully. But once we forget this point, the world will be filled with confusion.
So what happens to your heart in there when you read that piece?
I think I go back to the fly on the wall, and I think, I've complicated my life by wanting to know, not be the fly, but to know what the fly hears, sees, says, witnesses, participates in. And I think that's caused a lot of confusion, especially in my past, with the decisions I made, to jump into that and not just be the fly on the wall. And then as I continue to read the chapter, I think of my mom telling me, I'll give you 5 cents to go swat the fly. And so I think in a minute, I'll create something new, but at the same second, and I think this is my past. So I've had a lot of losses very suddenly. And I think that's what it is. It's that, but in an instant, that fly could be swatted off the wall and whatever's been created will be gone.
Yeah, I could hear, I thought, in between the lines, a sense of grief and longing somehow. Yeah. Suzuki Roshi would use the image of a frog for how to sit, You see a frog, they just sit there very still. But if a fly goes by, there's an immediacy to their response, and then they just sit as if there's no past and no future. But we are learning to respond to what's in front of us in the most appropriate way, and then to let that go. But that it goes in conflict with what it means in some ways to be a human, the way we attach. And I don't mean Buddhist attachment, I mean loving attachments that we have and the losses that we have. But from the big I, to respond to our grief is the same thing as the frog responding to the fly. It's like, oh, here you are now, brokenhearted. Here you are now, confused. Here you are now, wishing it was something else. And to respond to that. Am I speaking to the thing that you were?
Yes.
I'm once I was going to see a teacher for practice discussion for Dokusan when I was at the monastery at Tassajara. And the person I was going to see, it wasn't Blanche, it was someone else, was in the abbot's cabin, the cabin that Suzuki Roshi built. And right next to it is a little building called the Kaisando. And in a Zen temple, like Kaisando was the founder's hall. So it was a small shrine to Suzuki Roshi. And those of us who were waiting to see this teacher were inside the Kaisando, just sitting zazen, waiting for our name to be called, to go to the other cabin. And we were facing the wall, but the wall we were facing was a Sochi screen wall. So it's rice paper with the wood things. And so I'm sitting there with my eyes open, as one does in zazen in a formal way. And so there's just this backlit piece of rice paper in front of me, the wall. Well, now what's happening on the other side of the wall is there's a fly. Then it lights on the paper. But because of the paper, I can't see any activity of the fly. I can only see it lighting. So to me, I'm looking and there's suddenly fly. And there's no fly. Because I can't see it coming or going. There's only the immediacy of appearance of something. And then suddenly it's dissolution. And it was so startling. to me, because we make all these narratives and ideas about how things arrive and how they go away and all that, and we miss the actual moment of meeting, which is really where the life is. The other piece I just wanted to underscore is the piece about Dana Prajna Paramita. So it's one of the paramitas, the paramita of Dana Paramita, which is giving, which is the first of the paramitas. And so I just want to read one more piece from that talk. So you don't have to look it up. I'll just read to you. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Every existence in nature, every existence in the human world, every cultural work that we create is something which was given or is being given to us, relatively speaking. But as everything is originally one, we are in actuality giving out everything. Moment after moment, we are creating something. And this is the joy of our life. But this I, which is creating and always giving out something, is not the small I, not me. It's the big I. Even though you do not realize the oneness of the big I with everything, when you give something, you feel good because at that time you feel at one with what you're giving. This is why it feels better to give than to take. A little bit like the waterfall, the river, too. So, thank you very much. Sheila. Peters. You see how much more fun this is than me just talking? It all comes out, but it's much more alive, Hi, Sheila.
Hi, Flint.
Do you want to read what you sent to me, or if you don't have it, I'll read it back to you?
I think I have it, although my book seems to be not like anybody else's in the room, so I can't really give you.
Well, in my old version, it was page 124, and the anniversary version is page 115. But
Okay,
maybe,
I think mine's 156.
oh, well, good. That's good. Go ahead.
I might need you to remind me where I started.
There's no need to intellectualize.
Yeah, here we are. Okay, it's in experience, not philosophy.
Yeah, there you go. That's easier.
I am a reference librarian, Have to make sure I was on the right page. I'll just start at the beginning of that paragraph. Zazen practice is the practice in which we resume our pure way of life beyond any gaining idea and beyond fame and profit. By practice, we just keep our original nature as it is. There is no need to intellectualize about what our pure original nature is, because it is beyond our intellectual understanding. And there is no need to appreciate it, because it is beyond our appreciation. So just to sit without any idea of gain and with the purest intention to remain as quiet as our original nature, this is our practice.
Okay. So tell me something about that. How did that catch you? What called you forward?
Well, basically, I'm always trying to figure it out. My mind is always trying to understand.
Sure.
From the words, from the concepts. So
Perfectly lovely. That's a perfectly lovely thing to do.
and yet,
how would you step beyond that?
And I think that's why I keep coming back, you said asking that question over and over, it is because I don't want to keep intellectualizing what is my original nature. I want to be with it, be quiet, and sit, and with sincere intention, but without real understanding intellectually.
One time on the fourth day of a long sesshin, in that time when it's rough, Suzuki Roshi came forward to give his talk for that day. And he sat down in front of the students and he spoke in kind of a, brief, kind of halting English and with an accent. And everybody's weary and like, oh Lord, how are we going to get through this day? And he said, imagine, once again, his accent is all the problems that you are having now will last for the rest of your life. And then he laughed. Your intellectual longing will last for the rest of your life. Enjoy it. Just don't identify it as the only who that you are. The little paragraph you just read, it starts with Zazen practice is the practice. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Read the first sentence as if, but don't just read it like you're trying to tell me this. Like you want me to know this.
Zazen practice is the practice in which we resume our pure way of life, beyond any gaining idea and beyond fame and profit.
Oh, so you're telling me that to sit is to resume something that's already there.
Mm-hmm.
Without worrying about fame or profit or gaining ideas. Is that right? Okay.
I think so.
The next sentence I'm going to say to you. Ready? Okay. So by practice, we're just to keep our original nature as it is. Oh, huh. So you tell me the next one. There's no need.
There is no need to intellectualize about what our pure original nature is, because it is beyond our intellectual understanding.
Oh, okay. So you do have some desire for intellectual understanding, but the resumption of our original nature is going beyond our intellectual understanding. It's okay to have it. We're just going to go beyond it, huh? Okay. So then I would continue. So in that case, there's no need to appreciate it particularly because it's also beyond our appreciation. So what do we do? You tell me what we do. What's the next sentence?
So just to sit without any idea of gain and with the purest intention to remain as quiet as our original nature. This is our practice.
Oh, this is our practice. Okay. Oh, okay. It's different to bring it alive like that, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right before that, there's a section in that same it says to practice zazen with a group. You see that? Like the paragraph before or something close. Okay. To practice zazen with a group is the most important thing for Buddhism and for us, because this practice is the original way of life. And I just wanted to underline score that because when I see you all sitting and remember what it's like to sit in that room, and I certainly know what it feels like to sit in this room with all of you online because I do it all the time. But I'll continue. Without knowing the origin of things, we cannot appreciate the result of our life's efforts. Our effort must have some meaning. To find meaning of our efforts is to find the original source of our effort. We should not be concerned about the result of our effort before we know its origin. Like, what?
No.
If the origin is not clear and pure, our effort will be not pure and its results will not satisfy us. But then he takes us back to that same invitation. When we resume our original nature and incessantly make our effort from this base, we will appreciate the result of our effort moment after moment, day after day, year after year. This is how we should appreciate our life. Isn't it interesting in that paragraph, he says we should appreciate our life. In the next paragraph, he says you don't need to appreciate it. Always playing both sides of the fence, isn't he? Take care of yourself as a vulnerable human being and step beyond all.
No, it's freezing.
It's okay.
Does that make sense?
You froze.
Am I animated once again?
You're good. Okay.
Now you're.
Okay. I was just making the comment that he was in the same talk speaking about the relative and the absolute, both sides. Appreciate your life, take care of your life, your vulnerable humanity, and step beyond. Enlightenment is where we step beyond and see the vast, beautiful, large, big mind, big heart, all that. Endarkenment is the stepping down into the fullness of what it means to be a limited human being. And awakening is integration of enlightenment and endarkenment. Enlightenment is not what this points to. It's awakening. Enlightenment's only half of the equation. So take that and sit with it. Have more, but I see we have only 5 more minutes, right? Okay. So rather than getting into another one, before we do our set, I'm going to just mention a couple of other small vignettes from his teaching on Beginner's Mind that I just found kind of humorous. You know, we might as well have some fun. They're also the kind of humor that are a little bit startling. Probably you've heard this one because it's kind of famous. One morning he was giving a talk and to his most senior students, and he said, you know, each of you are perfect just like you are, and you could use a little improvement. Once again, he's talking about these two sides, you know. And since we had this discussion with Cheryl earlier about nirvana, someone asked him, what is nirvana? And he said, seeing one thing through to the end. Seeing one thing through to the end. Doing one thing completely. Moment after moment. You know, there's no permanent nirvana. There are nirvanic moments. We have nirvanic moments. And in this case, nirvana means free of our conditioning, basically, free of our attachments, just free of all the stuff. When we just move with reality. And it's practical. There's a story when he was with a bunch of students, and they took a bunch of tools and they went up one of the trails to work on a project at Tassajara. And if you've never been there, it's in the high desert mountains above Big Sur and the Ventana Wilderness, and quite remote. And so they were, I think, clearing some trails or something. And they got up to where they were going to work, and they realized they'd forgotten the shovel. So everybody starts talking about what should we do and how we're going to do it, how we're going to end. And then when they finish all their discussions, it's like, where's Suzuki Roshi? Well, he was halfway down the mountain to get the shovel. The fly, just do what's needed. Not too much discussion. But we run into each other, and one day, this one student was complaining to Suzuki Roshi. I think he was on the serving crew at Tassajara, about the other people he was working with and how they weren't acting right and how much trouble they were having with them. And Suzuki listened. And then finally he said, if you want to see virtue, you have to have a calm mind. And in another situation where something similar was happening, he said in a pretty strong way to one of the students, I remember he said, you have no idea how hard it is to love some people. Yeah. I think this is probably plenty for our time now. So we'll have we have a brief break, is that correct? And we'll come back for another period of Zazen and Kinhin. And our final time for the day. This final time after our sitting and walking is billed as inquiry, which means a time when everyone gets a chance to come up and just bring whatever questions they have. I may say a couple things, but really it's just an open time to bring whatever questions, concerns, comments, anything that's here. Doesn't have to be necessarily from the text. Which reminds me of another story, which David Chadwick tells, actually in the beginning of the biography of Suzuki Roshi. This was in the early days at Tassajara, and David is an interesting guy. He's from Fort Worth and just kind of a rough around the edges Fort Worth guy, but he went to San Francisco in the 60s and practiced with Suzuki Roshi. And so he said, I wanted to ask a question that I didn't expect him to answer. Thing that the student always asks the teacher just to see what they will say. And so David says to him at the end of the lecture, he said, I love listening to you. I could listen to you all day long. And it's very meaningful to me, but I have no idea what you're talking about. He said, could you just summarize Buddhism in one? But knowing that he wouldn't do it, But David said that night he did. He said, everything changes. Next question. Enjoy your break.